how slow you are to believe all that the prophets said. It's not easy to keep a perspective with our lives. You know and I know, and you say it very often, where does the time go? We're so easily distracted by events and media and just plain busyness. What's next on the schedule? But when we do take time to reflect, then sometimes God gives us the grace to see the Spirit's working in us. So it's really interesting that the two disciples, after having heard that the women had found the empty tomb, just evidently couldn't comprehend it or handle it. So what did they do? They left Dodge. Off they went on the way to Emmaus. Just the opposite. I think they were trying to avoid all the issues. But on the other hand, they couldn't help talking about everything that had happened and trying to figure it out, to try and make sense of it. And it was at that point that Jesus, disguising himself in a way that they didn't recognize him, you heard that, he started walking with them and explaining it to them. You know, the disciples had had a pretty bumpy relationship, and the understanding of Christ was not an even kind of thing. They had gotten to know him as master, as teacher, as healer. But then, one who was accused and attacked and arrested and beaten and then crucified in that humbling way. And then to top it all, they're claiming he's rising from the dead. No wonder they walked away. But then Jesus, as I said, was walking with them. You know, you and I aren't very much different than they are. This is what we're trying to do all the time, is to figure out what God is saying to us, calling us as persons, as families, as a community of faith. And in fact, folks, that's especially to you who are guests here today, that's exactly what we are trying to do here at this parish during the homilies of the Easter season. Last week, we reflected on the courage and the boldness of the 300 families who broke off from Nativity Parish in St. Agnes when St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish was formed. They had quite an adventure. They had to start from scratch and build this community. And in a sense, we reflected that today we're doing the same thing as this parish is about to be recreated with a new form of pastoral leadership, and that of Sister Marla Clerks coming here as our pastoral leader on July 1st. For many of us, it takes time to just digest the implications of it all. So maybe to help us on that journey, we thought maybe today it would be good to reflect on some of the gifts that have surfaced among us since the founding of our parish, both in the good times and the bad. Well, you know, over 7 years of my pastorate here, I've heard a lot of stories, you know, many of them very good. The pews filled in the early days with all the kids and families, small neighborhood groups that did faith sharing, Renew, a community known for bringing in national speakers. But then, to be honest, you also shared with me some of the hard years that resulted in disappointment of some of our pastors and some of the parishioners, and times when quite a few parishioners left this parish, and the community that was left had to kind of rediscover who they were and are. But you know, I don't think I'm saying anything different that would happen to every one of our families. I bet that every one of you folks who are bringing your youngsters here for First Communion have a boatload of stories about your life, both the good and the bad. And yet today, despite whatever has happened, whatever challenges you've had, you're bringing your children here because you realize that this parish is a place where Christ dwells. And the gift that you have in your marriages and in your family is worth nourishing. We support each other on our journey. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other figure out how God's working in our lives. And we do that especially, not when we harangue against what's wrong, but when we point out the gifts in people and in the community. You know, again, over my 7 years, I've discovered lots of gifts in this parish. You know, there's some very, very quiet people in this parish. And there's another set that's very, very vocal, and a whole bunch in between. But you know, I've discovered what deep faith is in people, no matter what their psychological or personal history or likes are. And I found that especially when you've shared with me the crosses that you've borne, the deaths that have been experienced, as well as the moments when you said, I got to tell you this, it's wonderful. And you've shared rejoicing moments and moments of great faith. And then this is something that I keep hearing week after week. People will mention about somebody else or what they're doing. How many people are involved in volunteer work in this community? It's just amazing. And the generous financial support that people give to this parish so our vision and our mission can continue to be carried out. And then all the different appeals and support that you give. You know, there's like over, I think, 22 parishes throughout this community of different faiths who support the Ecumenical Partnership for Housing, the EPH, which is transitional housing from homelessness to stability. And of all the parishes, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton donates more than anybody else to that ministry. And the great gifts that you give to the special collections for the world's poor, etc. And then we have a whole group of lay leaders here who really have given and continue to give their time and talent to implement our parish vision and its mission. And I hear over and over again, gee, people feel welcome here. It's a good spirit. And you bring all of that together. And what do we do when we gather as a community? Right here at this table, we recognize Jesus in the breaking of the bread, just like the two disciples did when they got to the hotel in their journey. Because the beauty of the Catholic charism is that we are a Eucharistic community. Witness today these children coming to communion for the first time. We're glad that you're here. And I hope you can't, I want you to always remember this day, and then you'll be able to say when you come next week, this is my second communion, and then my third. And I hope that pretty soon you can't count anymore that high, because you're here all the time with your families, breaking the bread, sharing the cup. That's how the faith passes on to the next generation. But you know, there's another gift that I don't think we talk about enough. And that is the gift of who we are as a parish. Last week I was at a series of talks where commemorating the 500th anniversary of the Reformation started by Martin Luther. And the title of the day was From Conflict to Communion. And Bishop Skilba, the retired auxiliary bishop from Milwaukee, reminded especially the Catholics that were there that every parish is formed and has a special gift because of the name of the patron that is given to that parish. And so I was thinking, this woman in revolutionary times, the first American-born saint in our country. What a story she had. You know, like a number of you here. She was a convert to Catholicism. She was a wife and a mother of 5 and had a wonderful marriage. But then her husband got sick at an early age, and there she was, a widow with 5 kids. A woman who then went from riches to poverty as she struggled to raise her kids alone without the income that was there. But a woman who was extremely determined in order to feed her kids and to teach them. She was willing to move from city to city, from New York City to Baltimore to the little burg of Emmitsburg, 10 miles south of Gettysburg, where she then taught kids in order to be able to afford to teach her own kids and have something to eat. And she ended up forming the first Catholic school system in the country. And then women gathered around her to assist her in this. And then they began to call her Mother, Mother Seton. And before long, she had established the religious order of the Sisters of Charity in the United States. From her perspective, it didn't end so well, even though she was filled with faith. But you know, in the days before antibiotics and penicillin and all of that, she got TB, just like her husband had, and she died in her mid-40s. What a gifted woman, both in good times and in bad. And you know, now our parish is being asked to live out a similar story, as we have a former school teacher, a member of a religious order, who's willing to move from one town to another, from Gillett to Green Bay, and Sister Marla Clerk will become our pastoral leader here today. I hope that she's able then to help this community grow to whatever is the next chapter. You know, these children who are here today and their parents need us as parishioners to inspire them so that they can be the next generation of faithful Catholics at our parish. So by reflecting on our gifts in this community, may we be inspired in such a way that we can show them the risen Christ, and they can recognize Jesus in the breaking of the bread.